was your experience? What were some of the ways you tried? What are some roadblocks to extending invitations? And how do you see yourself as an evangelist? And what are your strengths that you bring as an evangelist? I don't know if you want to do some group discussions at all. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I'll say, well, I'm going to midnight mass. Why don't you come with me? And I just round up everybody that I can, and that's very helpful.
Yeah. Right.
If I pray for someone.
Yeah. That's too. Yeah.
I sometimes say, I pray for this. Why don't you come to mass and give
Right.
someone?
Right. Yeah, I should have mentioned prayer too.
There's a lady in the local supermarket. I won't say which one. She's a cashier. And sometimes she asks me about my medal. We have a relationship about 5 years now. And one weekend I was buying Christmas cards, and she said, "Oh, they're so pretty." And she said, "You have the Blessed Mother. I'm guessing you're Catholic." And I said, she said, "Well, I used to be." And I said, "Once a Catholic, always a Catholic." So she said she was afraid to go to church. Again, recently somebody yelled at her and clergy, because she's living with somebody now. She was in an abusive relationship, and a lot of it's out of ignorance. So I said, "Look, if you're afraid, just go sit in the back of the church." "Oh, well, St. Gregory's is too big." So I sent her over to St. Raphael's, the little chapel in the back.
Right.
And so I've been watching this relationship for 5 years, and now she goes to mass, and she's getting an annulment.
Oh, great. Okay.
So, it all started at the supermarket counter.
Yeah.
And I also realized, and she was the one that made me realize it, a lot of times we wear a cross, but so do a lot of Christians. But when you have the Blessed Mother on, they are pretty sure you're Catholic.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And I have my crucifixes, but I wear this a lot.
Yeah. I should have mentioned about the sacraments too. When people say, "Oh, why do you go to confession?" It's a bunch of baloney. I said it's not about just confessing your sins. Again, the sacraments have helped us to grow in grace and faith. That when I can confess my sins, as Jesus says, and Jesus instituted confession by telling the apostles, "Those sins you retain will be retained. Those sins you forgive will be forgiven." And it's not just to get yelled at, to feel bad. It's to help you experience that mercy of God, that love of God, that compassion. And the priest should be one of compassion and love.
This is why a lot of people, there's so many people going for psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And, one time I was so exhausted, the priest said to me, "You're the confessor of the unchurched." I said, "What are you talking about?" I was clueless.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't give it up. You're the confessor of the unchurched." And he hit me between the eyes.
Really?
And a lot of times people will say, "I was looking in the phone book," or "I was looking, and your last name sounds Irish. You must be Catholic." I said, "Well, how do you know I'm not Polish or Italian?"
Yeah.
But people are all in different places.
Yeah, that's true. And again, you want to be gentle with them when you bring up situations like that. And it's not always easy.
It took 3 years to get this cashier to get her foot in the door. Not even for mass.
Because I remember a bishop talked at the seminar, and he said the biggest obstacle is people don't feel the need for salvation. The idea that I'm going to heaven no matter what, and they just don't want to grasp that, I think one of my big evangelism experiences recently was with Carol knows about my cousin who passed away last May, and he struggled. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he struggled when he came home. He was 11 years older than me, so we didn't really become friendly till I was in my early 20s. He was maybe mid-30s. And my sisters knew him better, and they said when he came home, you could see he was a different person. And he struggled, just readjusting. He struggled with, addictions. And he was diagnosed about 5 or 6 years ago with the cancer. And then we started talking when I was in the seminary. And then we'd talk when we'd see each other at the parties. And I really saw him in the last year or so really make that effort to come back. and I gave him some prayer books, and his brother said, yeah, he's carrying the prayer book around with him all the time. And I really felt he came to finally make peace with himself and with God. That because I saw him in September of last year, and he said, the doctor told me right now it doesn't look good. He said they're going to try a couple things, and he said, it was interesting, he said, Tom, I'm more scared now than when I was in Vietnam. And he was in infantry, they called him a grunt, I think. And he said, I'm more scared now than when I was there. He said he never thought that would happen. But I think he came near the end to accept what was happening, and he seemed to be at peace. We talk, he never had, I can't believe this is happening, I hate God, why did this happen to me? He was okay, he seemed to be able to embrace it, and he still wanted to hear, he wanted to talk, and he still wanted the prayers. I remember I gave him the anointing, and we prayed the Our Father together, and that was a great moment for us. But again, it was easier because he came to me, and I think even his brother had said to him, "Why don't you go talk to Tom?" And so that made it a lot easier for me. And I guess you see the people they want to know, and that's what makes it easier. When you approach somebody and you keep chasing, like Jesus again with the rich man, he didn't go chasing after the guy. I think with us, we meet somebody, maybe our children or a brother, and you try to bring something up, and then they're standoffish. How much longer do you continue with it? I think that's a problem too. To discern that.
Yeah, we have a lot of friends that aren't Catholic, and over the years, we've just been showing them by example. Like you're going to church again on Sunday,
Yeah.
So you're not.
Yeah.
You're going to Bible study, that's only Baptists do that.
Yeah.
Catholics do that also.
Yeah.
So he's hitting me up with all these verses,
Yeah.
and we're hitting him back. and it's it's a 10-year battle, but it's spreading. So you can't preach one thing and be caught doing something else.
Oh yeah.
You have to walk the
we have to be people who strive after holiness.
because they're looking at me.
Oh, yeah,
Looking at
right,
my
yeah,
life,
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
minute I step off and I do something wrong, he's after me.
Yeah. But we're not perfect. I mean, the idea, I think, is for people, are you desiring God? Is God, like with the rich young man, he couldn't put God first. And I see with people, sometimes the possessions become more valuable. And I go, okay, what if this brand new Mercedes-Benz got destroyed in an accident? Could you live with that? Or could you, my life is over? Like I remember, I listen to sports radio once in a while, I hear these people talk about a game 20 years ago when the Mets or Yankees lost the World Series. I can't get over it, I'm still upset. But what if you lost your relationship with God? Would you be that upset? And I think that's the hard thing. But the thing is, I'm striving after holiness. And like I said, we all sin. Nobody's perfect. But the idea is, what am I desiring God? Am I striving? Am I making that full effort, the best I can, to be a holy person? And then I think it's hard. Like I have friends I help, some people, and sometimes I get worn out. And I thought, give me a break. I can't come over tomorrow. I'll come over the next day. And it's hard. You don't want to be cold, but we're weak. And I'm 50 years old now, and I'm starting to.
Where do you get to the arm?
My arm hurts.
I wonder if today it's a bit harder to evangelize because there's such an emphasis on being politically correct, and you never want to offend. It's always political correctness is a problem, I think. Look at how often the Catholic Church is mocked in TV, and they get away with it, the other faiths. And I think all faiths should be respected. I'm not condoning, mocking and ridiculing other faiths, but the Catholic Church, it's like a pastime for some groups, I think. I was at that comedian Silverstone, I think, or Alicia Silver. She mocked the pro-life rally. She had a little ad that mocked Jesus and the Catholic belief. Yeah, we don't hear nothing here. I don't hear any of the news networks coming out against her. I think Fox did,
I think Fox brought it up, but the other ones, I don't think they did. I could be wrong, but yeah, but that's okay. You know? But they don't talk about how Jesus changed other people's lives. They don't talk about that. That's, you know, that's the sad part of it with the political correctness. You know? And there was that Matthew McConaughey, that an actor. He thanked God during his speech, and then I was watching. They had some tweets of people who got mad at him for doing that. It's like, all right, if you don't believe in God, what's the big deal, you know? But yeah, they were about 3 or 4 tweets, the people who were really upset that he did that he thanked God on national TV.
Two-edged sword.
Yeah, I admire that for doing that, you know. Yeah.
Just to comment, I agree completely with what you were saying about people that don't, you just don't have time for it, you're into sports or,
Right.
I see a lot of, like young moms running around,
Yeah.
like we do the same.
Right.
Everybody's got sports and activities and things, and so you
Yeah.
just kind of run around and that's what you're doing, so that's a big distraction.
Yeah, right. And I think that's the difference. Like, I was born in '63. I didn't start playing organized sports until I was like 5th grade.
Yeah.
And now they're starting at 5 years old. And my friend Ramon grew up in Spain, and he was a very good soccer player. He played at Villanova 4 years. And we were talking. He's about a year older than me. And he said, Tom, when I came to the United States, I couldn't believe how organized the sports are here. He said, when I was in Spain, we didn't start playing organized sports until high school. We just went down to the field in the park. And that's what I remember doing for most of the day. It wasn't like all this today where,
It gives us all something to do.
Yeah.
We're so busy doing
Right.
all these important things.
right, yeah. And again, I think again, there's that part, oh, I can see that, I can touch it.
Yes.
And that's what, like my friend was saying, that's what stimulates us, people. Again, where this idea of going to church, maybe going to church on a Wednesday afternoon or something, after school with the kids, doesn't stimulate me. I don't see God. I don't see him. Jesus is in the tabernacle. He's not talking to me. I wonder if I sometimes wonder if that's part of it. Yeah. But again, part of it also, we have to live out that faith as well. Let people, as Pat said, let people see. Again, has Jesus made a difference in my life by how I live my life, how I give of myself to others? And that's the important thing. I think I hear people say, all Catholics do are just pray the rosary and go to Mass, and that's it. But you think about how many people that throughout the world our church has helped. And they say, well, we're out of touch. Catholic Church is out of touch. What do you mean? We're going to the prisons. We're doing hospital ministry. Deacon Andy goes to the nursing homes, right?
Yep.
What do you mean we're out of touch? We're in touch with the people who are suffering. Just because we stand up against abortion, we say abortion's wrong, we say same-sex marriage is wrong, that means we're out of touch. We're trying to help preserve society. Yeah.
I lived in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia for a couple of years. And I don't know, when I was there, it was like one policeman after another, 2 or 3 a year getting shot. Young fathers. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, you know what? They're all getting buried out of the basilica. They must be Catholic. And then somebody did a study. There's preponderance of policemen, even here in Hamilton, dominantly Catholic.
Right.
And that was a real revelation. And then I realized keeping the law, safety, protection, laying their lives down for someone
Sure.
else.
Yeah.
And even, it was just overwhelming because, like, there's a lot of other faiths in Philadelphia. I became very aware of that, but it seems to be a primary occupation.
Yeah. And I think, when I was in Point Pleasant, we used to have these community hymn sings, which are really nice. They're all churches in the area came together. It was usually the 3rd Sunday of the month, and we'd play music, we'd sing songs together. Then a group from a church would go up and perform a couple songs. And we had all the denominations, and it was great because we respected each other. We weren't trying to draw each other into our own. We met people where they were at. And the nights were just great. I was sorry to hear that they stopped because the person who was running them really couldn't do it anymore. But it was just a great moment to be with other people and just share our love for Jesus Christ. And
Well, I remember years ago, even here in St. Gregory's, we celebrated Christian Unity Week. And we went to, do you folks remember? We went to the different churches. That's not being done anymore. But I also remember Chris, who was from, now he's a deacon, parish down the street. I forgot the priest who passed away. Father Rich had just become pastor. And from all the meetings they used to have with the clergy, some of them actually converted. What do? We have a wife and kids.
Right.
You know, and actually one of them eventually became a deacon. He's now he's a classmate of his. And I'm like, but why aren't we doing that anymore? You know?
Right.
It just seems to have stopped.
Yeah. I know in Long Branch we.
Unity Week
Yeah.
in January.
Yeah.
Has anybody heard of it again?
I know. We in Long Branch we did something with the different groups. We'd have a day of Thanksgiving, usually the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and we'd have it at a different church. And whoever wanted to come came. We sang songs, and
It's
somebody
not
would.
just our parish, it's just not happening.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, any more questions? All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for coming, and I hope this is what you wanted.